You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
Do you want to experience the thrill of a Packers game at Lambeau Field? If so, be sure to get your game tickets from the longtime trusted source in Wisconsin, Ticket King. Visit their locations in Milwaukee and Green Bay, or just go to their website, theticketking.com. Again, that's theticketking.com.
Check New York Bozo! New York Bozo! New York Bozo!
I got to get my biceps a little bigger.
Yeah, you can always work on that.
Or I could sure use a hot dog with chili.
You know what time the game starts? Hey, you got any left-handed footballs? We need to fire him. Is anybody else tired, or is it just me? Good thing I'm in shape.
You got any eligibility left?
I got some advice for y'all. Take 2 weeks off, then quit.
Pack to the Future is brought to you by the Ticket King. Whether you're making the trip to see Aaron Rodgers and the Packers play at legendary Lambeau Field, you want to see Giannis and the Bucks at the beautiful Fiserv Forum, or the Badgers, Brewers, or any concert tickets you might need, the Ticket King is your source no matter the occasion. Visit them online at theticketking.com and search their selection for yourself. And remember, there's no such thing as a sellout when you can go to the Ticket King. One more time, that's theticketking.com.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. We are here at PTTF. We are looking forward to just giving you a breakdown of the Lions coming into town, losing to the Green Bay Packers 23-22 in the final seconds with a game-winning field goal by Money Mason Crosby. Matt, this was a great game, and before I go any further, I'm Duke. He's Matt. Matt, let's talk some Packers football.
Oh, let's do it. Finally feel like I can exhale from last night's game. But, boy, that wasn't a pretty one, but they escaped with a win, which is all that really matters from that. But, we have a lot to talk about tonight as far as, the officials, the drops, the defense in the first half. But, hard to win games in the NFL, so beggars can't be choosers, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was one of those tale of two halves kind of games. First half, the Lions jump out early. There's a turnover by Aaron Jones. There's some missed opportunities by the Packers offense. Short drives, big plays given up by the Packers defense. And next thing you know, it's 10-0 Lions, in the first quarter. It was just one of those kind of games. But, how'd you feel about, kind of the resiliency of the team, Matt?
Honestly, they took a pretty big punch to the mouth at the beginning of the game. Darrell Bevel had a really good scripted first couple of plays. That flea flicker really caught the defense off guard. Really smart play by him, testing the new safeties in there without Darnell Savage. But the Packers did a really good job of, taking that punch and only letting him get 3 points out of it. And really, after it was, they got the first 13 points of the game, and then the Packers started to come back. They only let in 9 points after that. They stopped them to 5 field goals throughout the entire game. And when you lose the turnover battle and you're only giving up field goals, you really put your offense in give them an opportunity to come back in that game. And that defense did a really solid job of it. So first half notwithstanding, the defense really showed up and really gave the team a chance to win.
Right. Yeah. The Packers, like you said, with the 3 turnovers, which were, a fumble on offense, a fumble on special teams, and then the, interception off, the face mask of Shepard in the red zone. I mean, it was difficult, because you just felt like, they were giving this game away, and thankfully the defense clamped down, and they just didn't let the Lions really, capitalize on the mistakes, on the turnovers. And that was just huge, man. I don't think, Matt, we have seen a defense from the Packers just be so, complimentary and, tough to score on as this defense since the Packers in 2010, when we all know what happened. They won Super Bowl 45.
Yeah, this defense gave up somewhere in the realm of 240 yards in the first half, but in the second half they only gave up 58 total yards. That's really a testament to Mike Pettin really being able to get these guys back on track, getting the pass rush going a little bit. One thing I did add up over the after last night's game. So obviously last year's pass rushers were Matthews, Perry, Gilbert, and Fackrell. They had a combined 18 sacks from last year. The law firm of Smith and Smith, Gary and Fackrell, through 6 games already have 14 and a half sacks. That's really a testament to how much these guys are getting after the quarterback, really making life uncomfortable for these opposing quarterbacks and these passing offenses. And you could see it in the second half. Stafford did not look comfortable and really couldn't get the ball out fast enough to try and get Kenny Galladay or Marvin Jones the ball. So really a testament to this pass rush and to the secondary. I don't think Jair Alexander was targeted much in this game. Kevin King bounced back after a rough first half, but really solidified down the stretch, and that really helped bring this game back. And, you give Aaron Rodgers the ball enough times, he's going to do something with it.
Yeah, the Smith brothers, I mean, not only that, they're leading the NFL with most sacks as a tandem with 13 and a half. And so, the Packers haven't had, again, this kind of duo, if you will, in what seems like forever. And you're absolutely right. When the Packers really needed to pressure Stafford, it happened. And that, to me, was just, it was just awesome. Because I think, I think Packers fans have grown accustomed to, unfortunately, seeing the defense just kind of break and, not hold its own. And it's always kind of been this thing where it's like, oh, well, they're going to give up points or they're not going to get off the field. And even though it's 6 games in, it's still kind of hard to believe. I'm having a tough time, saying, okay, that this is the new norm, but I'm loving every second of it.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it's given Rodgers a little bit more confidence where he might be able to take some of these shots. Like I feel like the last 2 years he's been very turnover averse in almost to a fault. And you saw him take a couple of deep shots last night, like that throw to Alan Lazard, to somebody who up until the fourth quarter really hadn't seen much run in this Packers offense. And he trusted him late in the game when the game was on the line to go up and make a play. And, he threw that right in the bucket. That throw, dangerous as it was absolutely gorgeous. But, I don't know if he makes that throw if he can't trust that defense to at least make a stop or two,
Right.
I think it allows him to be a little bit more aggressive and make a little bit tougher throws. And he had another one to MVS that was a great bomb down the sideline. So I think it helps open up the offense a little bit more and let Aaron Rodgers be Aaron Rodgers. So it's great to see. I kind of want to see a little bit more of a complete game out of the defense because the first couple of weeks, I think since the Bears game, they've shown stretches of being absolutely dominant, but will not complete the game. They had a rough first half in this one. They had a rough second half against the Vikings. They had a rough second half against Denver. And stuff down. Really put together a complete performance yet. And the schedule lightens up a little bit after this. They go to Oakland next weekend, obviously on short rest. But, you kind of hope that they can string together, 4 straight quarters of dominant ball.
Right. They're definitely, there's going to be those growing pains, but I love what you're saying is that they're on track. This is the thing is that, we are seeing a improved unit, something that you said at the very beginning. It reminded me of a quote. Mike Tyson said, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And, I think the Packers got punched in the mouth early and absolutely gathered themselves to make the adjustments needed, which I believe, much credit to Pettin and his staff. And they made the adjustments necessary. And the next thing you know, I mean, they really clamped down. I mean, I think, the Lions had 299 total yards. That's total yards. I mean, they were 3 for 13 on third down. Matt Stafford was 18 of 32. They had 3 sacks. They lost 22 yards, only 56 yards on the ground. So the defense absolutely just, I mean, to really hold any team, obviously the 2-half thing is kind of a, a little bit of a weird thing, if you will, but they held the team under 300 yards, and that's pretty solid defense, if you ask me.
It is, and they really shut down what makes this Lions offense hum. And Kerryon Johnson did not have a great night last night, and that's a testament to Mike Pettin and this defense, because that's been a very clear weakness through the first 6 weeks of this season. The run defense hasn't been able to shut down some good running backs, but obviously Ezekiel Elliott had his moments last week, but they did a good job of shutting down Kerryon Johnson, making sure that he was, wasn't able to get much running room. But and TJ Hawkinson didn't really have that great of a game either, and the Packers have kind of shown some struggles against some, pretty athletic tight ends to start the season too. So lots of encouraging things from the defense. And like you said, it's all about, they're on the right path. They just need to kind of, and a McCarthyism here that I use a lot is just stack success, keep building off of what they've been doing well. And that's been rushing the passer and playing good pass defense on the boundaries. And then in the areas that they've struggled, try and improve every week. And honestly, it's hard to say that they haven't. They've done a really good job of, after getting, run all over against Denver, did a really good job of shutting down the run the last couple of weeks. And, after the Philly game, getting kind of run over by some pretty good tight ends, really have done a pretty good job of shutting down some pretty good tight ends. So
the Lions had 20 rushing attempts for 56 yards.
That's impressive.
That's 2.8 per rush, which is, the Packers nearly tripled their total on the ground with 170 yards rushing, 29 attempts, 5.9 yards per carry. So, yeah, man, the biggest woe, like you said, about this defense thus far had kind of been, that run defense. And, it was on point last night. I mean, what can we say? I don't think you can ask for a much better performance from the front seven to lock those guys down. It was impressive. What'd you think? Let me ask your thoughts quickly. What'd you think about, Kevin King against Galladay? I know Galladay had a little bit of a night, 5 receptions, 121 yards, and on 9 targets. So he kind of put up a little bit of yards. What'd you kind of think about Kevin King's performance last night?
I mean, if I recall correctly, most of those yards came on the flea flicker. So that was like a 60-yarder or so. So I take it with a grain of salt, because he took his lumps early on, and I think he kind of, if I could guess, he's still a little banged up and kind of had to work into it, get a little testosterone going and flowing through.
Right.
I think settled down as the game went along, and you saw from both, the entire secondary really, clamped down in the second half. Jair Alexander was not targeted much in this game, and I think that made a huge difference. Marvin Jones did not have a very good game, and he was mostly matched up against Jair Alexander, so that's really a credit to him. So, King's, and this is kind of the way I look at Kevin King right now. He hasn't played a full season, and I know it's his 3rd season, but he only played in, I think it was like 8 games his first season, and I think he was lucky to play 6 games last season. So I kind of look at it as, he's really in his sophomore year essentially, and you're seeing the sophomore jump. Mm-hmm. He's playing really good ball. It's just inconsistent, and he just needs to kind of learn his skill set a little bit more and not rely on just his speed. He's a big guy and can really cover these guys pretty closely. So, I want to see more out of him, and I think you've seen some glimpses of being, a really good shutdown corner. But yeah, I mean, you saw it with Jair Alexander last week. These young guys are just going to have some growing pains, and it's going to happen. But they're young and talented, and if they keep improving the way they've been improving, come playoff time, that experience is going to be huge.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely. I mean, these guys again are definitely trending the right direction on defense. Again, another solid performance because they really the 5 field goals by the Lions was just a incredible testament to this defense. Mm-hmm. And mind you, I think we'll get into this maybe a little bit later, but given all the questionable calls last night, being the Lions' lone touchdown of the evening was a questionable call, and so you think 5 field goals and what looked to me and maybe some other people not a definitive touchdown on that was it I think on the goal line there. And so when you kind of look at it from that perspective, I mean, they were really, really solid in that regard. They don't give up anything easy. They definitely have fulfilled Pettine's motto in saying that we're going to make them work for it. So that's definitely encouraging to see.
Yeah, and they honestly they have a bend not break mentality, which is good to see. The goal line stand notwithstanding, obviously that was subjective calls are always going to be tough. That one, the way the commissioner's office and the way Al Riveron has started to kind of coach these officials is to defer to, what gets the reviews. So if it's a turnover, or if there's a turnover suspected, they're going to call the turnover because it's likely going to be reviewed. If it's looked like it could have been a touchdown, they're going to call it a touchdown and confirm it on review. So I don't think it's necessarily the right thing to do for the officials, and we'll get there. We'll get to that point later, where obviously the Packers benefited from a lot of good calls last night. But I think it really is kind of teaching some bad habits to the officials to just kind of rely on the review process as opposed to trusting their eyes. So, but it shouldn't detract from how well this defense played because they only gave up 1 touchdown, and it was on I'll call it questionable call, a 50-50 call. So, but what could have easily have been a 15 or a 23-15 game and not a 23-22 game. Right,
absolutely, and that's kind of how I saw it too. So again, much credit to the defense. Moving on a little bit, let's talk about the offense. For me, Jamal Williams has to be the offensive player of the game. For last night, he was what Aaron Jones did last week, minus all the touchdowns. But I mean, the productivity was incredible from Jamal Williams. 14 carries for 104 yards, a 7.4 average. He had a 45-yarder, which was a little bit surprising to me. I was like, okay, Jamal Williams, we haven't seen too many of the big runs from him. So, man, I mean, it was Jamal's night, man. I mean, it was so encouraging to see him just have a big game and step up in a big way.
Yeah, got to catch Jamal, right? No, honestly, he had a great night, and I think the Packers kind of game plan for him to be that workhorse a little bit more. I thought he had a great night. Receiving the ball, I think that was a highly underrated part of his game last night. Mm-hmm. He had those 4 receptions for 32 yards, and he looks good in the screen game. That's really an encouraging thing for a guy who might not. Obviously, last night had a pretty good night as far as yardage, but hasn't been much as far as he's kind of averaged below 4 yards per carry throughout his career. So. But he's always been a great pass protector, and to see that he has a little bit of dynamic ability in the passing game, that's encouraging to see, and that'll get him playing time. And it'll also, I know Aaron Jones had a little bit of a rough evening last night. He dropped that surefire touchdown. But these guys offer something in different. They each offer a little bit of something. Aaron Jones does have that receiving ability. I don't know if he's necessarily a deep threat in the passing game, as you saw last night, but he still has that ability to be able to. He's shifty and make the first guy miss. So, it's nice to have a two-headed monster in the backfield, and it was unfortunate that Williams was unavailable at the end of the Eagles game, being able to punch that ball in the end zone, and also not available last week. But this team has found a way to really scheme guys open, especially out of the backfield. Matt LaFleur has done a really good job with some of the injuries that have happened, and this week it was Jamal Williams being the benefit of it. Last week it was Aaron Jones being the benefit of it.
Right. I think they're definitely both. The running backs are doing exceptional. Aaron Jones again. Yes, he had the fumble. Obviously he dropped a would-be touchdown, but he actually still had a decent game on the ground. 4.3 yards per carry is certainly very productive. And so even though he wasn't kind of the star that he was last week in Dallas, he was definitely, these guys just complement each other. I don't think there's a better word. They do exactly what each other needs from, one another. Aaron Jones, it wasn't his big explosive night, and Jamal Williams capitalized on the opportunities given. So it was definitely that was definitely awesome. So let me throw you something here, Matt. A receiver not named Adams, MVS, Touchdown Jesus, or Gmo stepped up in a big way. Can you tell us who this infamous wide receiver was last night?
Was it the alien lizard Alan Lazard?
That's him.
Yeah, honestly, it was great to in a night where Geronimo Allison had some really bad drops. Valdez-Scantling was a little banged up. He had obviously a great deep ball, but didn't really get much run in this game. Jake Kumaro had a couple of receptions, but really wasn't targeted all that much in this game. Somebody needed to step up, and Alan Lazard did so in a big way. Obviously, that touchdown that he had down the sideline late in the game, Rodgers trusting him on a deep ball. It was great to see him trust a young player who really hadn't gotten many receiving yards. I think he had one total reception before this game, maybe two.
So he had one career reception.
So trusting a relative unknown late in the game against a division rival is huge, and for him to reward Rodgers' trust is pretty big. And honestly, for a big question mark that the Packers have had the last couple of weeks, you're going to see Alan Lazard get a little bit more run here. It looks like Geronimo Allison might miss this next week with a concussion. I don't think Jake Kumaro has lived up to the bandwagon status that he's gotten from a lot of fans. So I think, if Devontae Adams is still out and MVS is still kind of struggling with anything other than the deep ball, they're going to trust Alan Lazard a little bit more down the stretch here to, maybe as their number two. And when Adams comes back, they might have a nice little three-headed monster at wide receiver with, Devontae Adams, MVS, and Alan Lazard. That's all of a sudden a decent passing offense.
Yeah. Something that's really of note here is Lazard only played a quarter, man. And he came out with, 4 receptions for 65 yards. Obviously, the big 35-yarder for the touchdown, 16.3 yards average. Here's the thing that really, really jumped out to me. You got MVS who plays the entire game, mostly the entire game. He was only targeted twice, MVS. He had the long one of 46. Otherwise, MVS only caught another pass for 2 yards. Geronimo, 3 receptions, 40 yards on 7 targets. You go down the list, the other guy that I cannot overlook, Mercedes Lewis, had 2 big ones, 2 receptions, 50 yards on 2 targets. he and Jimmy Graham was blocking for him while he was running downfield.
Yep.
Which was incredible. But somebody needed to step up. And dude, it just so happened that this guy, like you said, steps up in a absolutely huge way. Now, here's something that I noticed, Matt. Check this out. Adams still leads the Packers in receptions despite missing 2 full games. Now, that in my opinion is a definite cause for concern. Adams has 25 receptions on the season. And so he is still leading the Packers in receptions despite missing 2 games. What are your thoughts on, kind of the wide receiver position group as it stands right now?
So I wrote on this a couple weeks ago and posted it on PTTF. Obviously, the receivers have been kind of a relative unknown, and I posted this exact question, when Davante Adams went down, if he were to go down, and lo and behold, the next week he went down with injury, what a concern that would be. MVS has shown at times that he could be a great number 2, but has been inconsistent at times. The big concern now is this is a 2 to 6 week injury for Davante Adams. So he's obviously on the low end on that right now, but he could miss upwards of 4 more weeks. They really need to try and find something. You saw a lot of big trades today. I don't know if the Packers are necessarily going to go for 2 first-rounders for any of the big star wide receivers or anything like that out there. But they might have to start investigating this if, Geronimo Allison is going to be out for very long too. So you're down,
Right.
and Shepard really, really struggled last night. So how many wide receivers do you have that you can really trust? Now it's on Gutekunst to try and find somebody out there, whether it's in the trade market or bringing back some retreads. Maybe they come back and, Packer fans are probably going to wince when I say this, but Jamon Moore, I think, is still out there. Somebody who they drafted and that knows the offense. So they need to do something, because outside of Lazard and Davante Adams, there really hasn't been anybody that's been able to consistently step up week after week. Lazard obviously last night. MVS has shown at times, but they just need to find something else out there. And with the tight ends also being a concern, what does that look like? I don't know, and this might be something they have to answer in the off season. They might not find a good trade partner. So it's not an easy answer right now. And with St. Brown going down at the beginning of the season and Jace going down at the beginning of the season, it really has put a damper on the weapons that Rodgers has.
Right. And I think one of the big things is, you got a guy, Jimmy Graham. He was targeted 5 times last night. He only hauls in 2 of those passes for 17 yards. And this guy obviously is the topic of much, Packers fans, conversation, and that it's just not adding up.
Yep.
There's obviously he is a huge investment. There's no doubt about it. Jimmy Graham has been a highly productive player in this league at one time. But for the Packers, it just doesn't seem like it's happening. It's not clicking. And, that is a disappointment at this point. Because right now we would think, in the absence of a guy like Davante Adams and potentially now Geronimo Allison, that this has got to be the next guy. He's the only guy on this roster, and I guess you could throw Mercedes Lewis in the conversation, that has experience and that actually has some stats under his name, because none of these other guys really have hardly any NFL experience and any NFL numbers, at this point. And so I don't know, what are you thinking, in terms of, just, again, not getting productivity from him? How is that affecting this offense or this plan?
Unfortunately, it affects it quite a great deal. I know LaFleur would love to be able to use a lot more 2 tight end sets. Bob Tonyan not being available last night probably hurt them in a lot of ways too.
Right.
But, you see it. They've been trying to force feed the tight ends the ball a lot.
Right.
Mercedes Lewis had a great night last night, and I think I tweeted out something like they should be giving all of Graham's reps to Lewis, because really and truly he's been playing better than Jimmy Graham, at least more consistently. But yeah, I think more from the standpoint of they're paying Jimmy Graham a lot of money to not produce, and what they could have been doing with that money is kind of why I'm a little torn on it, because he's making $10 million a year, and that could be a pretty solid wide receiver in this offense instead.
Right.
It's Jimmy Graham, he's allergic to blocking and apparently to catching with 2 hands. So, it's tough. I think he can still be useful in an NFL offense. But anything after the catch, he just isn't the same old Jimmy Graham of 2013,
Right.
where he could hurdle guys at will. He could, just run past a lot of linebackers. It's tough to see, because he was once such a great weapon, and now, he's 3rd string in this offense. If I was the coach right now, I would look at it and I'm like, Bob Tonyan and Mercedes Lewis have been more consistent in the last couple of weeks, and I'm trusting them more than Jimmy Graham right now.
Right. And, was something that, in reference to that, I think LaFleur is very much aware of those things. I think he is a very kind of the hot hand, the best man is going to play. Now, obviously, they're trying to make it work with Graham. But I think last night was a slight indication, and I don't know if you saw Rodgers, I think it was his post-game presser, that he acknowledged the fact that there are specific things now that they are kind of drawing up for Mercedes. And basically he was kind of talking about how every guy has their niche, every guy has their role in this offense. And I don't think LaFleur would necessarily hesitate to say, if Mercedes is the guy getting open, making the tough contested catches, he's going to get the reps. I personally believe he holds that kind of conviction where he's not afraid to pull a guy, where we know the former coach was kind of stubborn in that area, that would just stick with a guy, and never kind of sort of give anybody else an opportunity to step up. But right now, Lewis definitely seems to be earning Rodgers' trust, and I just think it's something that we'll probably keep our eye on as the weeks go. But at this point, you would think that Jimmy Graham would be feasting in this offense with no Adams. Tonyan is one less tight end, obviously on the field, and it's just not happening. So I don't know if anything's going to happen between, now and the trade deadline, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and honestly, I think I called for it a couple of weeks ago. I would almost prefer the Packers try and trade for a tight end, because of how much LaFleur seems to try and scheme those guys open, try and create those mismatches a little bit more. The Packers do have a decent number of talented pass catchers, at wide receiver. They just need some reps. Like MVS is exactly that.
Right.
Alan Lazard is that. So I would love to see them trade for somebody who might have been like a first-round talent. I know O.J. Howard is wasting away in Tampa Bay right now.
Wow.
Bruce Arians really doesn't do a good job of utilizing his tight ends. But yeah, I know Jay Sternberger is on IR, and he could return in Week 8, and maybe that's the catalyst that this offense needs, is just somebody else in there that's a little bit more youthful and is a little bit more spry than Jimmy Graham. But yeah, it looked like they're trying to scheme open Mercedes Lewis a little bit more. It looks like they were trying to work Bob Tonyan in last week before he got injured.
Right.
It's tough to see one of the great. I mean, Jimmy Graham might go down as one of the best tight ends to play in the NFL, but it's just tough to see him not work with Rodgers because of how talented he was and how good he would have been with Rodgers in his prime.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of this pipe dream at this point because I'm not sure how much more we need to see. And I think it's kind of going to put Gutekunst in a pinch because it's getting to that point where they are not something's going to happen one way or the other. And it would be a shocker if they let him go. To be honest, I just don't see it working out that way. But I kind of like your idea of, trying to acquire an O.J. Howard who runs like a receiver. I mean, that guy's got some crazy athleticism, but again, it's kind of a wait and see thing, at this point. I don't know what else you wanted to touch on with the offense. Did you have any other notes you wanted to cover with that?
Yeah. The only other thing I really wanted to talk about was obviously the pass catchers had their struggles with a lot of drops last night. Tight ends didn't have all that great of a night outside of a few Mercedes Lewis catches, but we have to give some mad props. This offensive line has done a fantastic job through the first 6 weeks of this season. This line's pass rush is actually pretty solid. And they really could not get a whiff of Rodgers much last night. They only got one sack on the evening. Elton Jenkins is looking like the real deal. Bakhtiari and Balaga has been playing some great football this year, and he's given himself a Pro Bowl bid right now. Corey Linsley coming back, playing strong. Billy Turner had a better game last night. This unit will get better because there's just, they've got two younger guys and new guys in there. But props to them. They played great and on a big stage too, keeping Rodgers clean.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate you, Matt, for bringing them up because, the big uglies, they deserve the love. You know what I'm saying? And they absolutely did a phenomenal job keeping Rodgers upright, which we all know as Packer fans is the priority. And also, creating those lanes, man. I mean, they are kind of, I don't know if they're changing identity a little bit, but I feel like Jenkins kind of gives them a little bit of that bulldozer, power blocking ability because the way I've always kind of looked at the Packers offensive lines in the past, you look at a team that they just played, the Dallas Cowboys, and those guys have some mammoth offensive linemen, and they've got the accolades to back it up, and they've always been one of those kind of offensive lines that bullies people and actually, just kind of has their way, and I almost see the Packers having gone from kind of that pass blocking sort of finesse line to now more of a line that's getting it done both ways. Pass blocking very efficiently, very well, and also they're starting to push back and create some serious lanes for these running backs. So I love it. They're awesome, man.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on something, and I think that's just kind of a byproduct of who the coach is. McCarthy really did not, he wasn't a big run proponent, and LaFleur definitely shows that he is willing to give it to the running backs a little bit more, spread the ball a little bit more between the run and the pass game. So I think these guys need to be a little bit better in that regard, and they now have, a couple of maulers in there. Elton Jenkins is an absolute mauler in the middle, and he's really good at it. And he's held his own in pass protection too. So, and then those bookends have been some of the best pass blocking type tackles in football. So obviously, they've been doing that for years. But Bakhtiari's done a pretty good job in run blocking too. So this unit's done a pretty good job of paving the way for the running backs, but also keeping Rodgers clean. So it's good to see. And they're going to have a couple of tough games here towards the end of the season. So they got to keep the momentum going now. They got to keep Rodgers clean and keep this running game moving.
Yeah, they need to. I think, the last thing I will say about the offense was one thing I noticed, and I kind of wrote this down, was that the red zone offense has been tricky. It seems like, it's a little bit hit or miss, week to week. And again, with the lack of receivers and the running game, it was working, really well last night. I would have thought that they would have tried running in the red zone, especially on that drive that ended up being, the interception that Rodgers had last night. Because again, you saw them spread them out. They don't go to the run, and I'm thinking, well, you've been running really, really well. I don't know if you have any thoughts on the red zone offense to this point.
Yeah, I mean, the field condenses a lot more there, and they definitely have tried throwing the ball a little bit more. And the hard part is one of your better red zone targets has been out the last 2 weeks. Devontae Adams wins at the line, and he can get you a quick slant in and, easy 7. Jimmy Graham used to be that in his early career and no longer is that. Jamal Williams probably should have been utilized a little bit more in the red zone and just wasn't. So, I think this offense definitely operates a little better between the 20s, but they'll figure it out a little bit more. I think it'll help to get the offense a little bit more healthy and really try and figure out, outside of Devontae Adams, who they want that number 2 target to be. So I think they're getting there, and I think LaFleur's done a pretty good job of week over week preparing. Obviously, the scripted plays have worked really well off the bat, but now he's starting to adjust over the course of the game, and I think he did a pretty good job because they showed last week they're willing to run at the goal line. Jamal Williams had 4 touchdowns. I don't think they're afraid to run it in the red zone. I think it's just you have Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback. You're going to try and throw it as much as you can. Putting the ball in his hands usually doesn't end too poorly.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm in agreement with that. It just seems like, it could be a little more efficient. But, hey, at this point, why are we even nitpicking? Because the Packers are 5-1.
Exactly.
So we're trying to find conversation to talk about here, Matt. I'll hit on this real quick, and then we'll probably get ready almost here to wrap it up. One of the things that, has been somewhat of a disappointment on this team has definitely been, the special teams. It seems like, we just cut the other returner that they just acquired, Smith, Traymon Smith, and Shepard, had a really poor outing last night. He's fielded some punts, kind of made some bad decisions, whether or not to fair catch or let it go. The times that he's let it go, it seems like every time the ball, rolls 5 yards and they down it, and pin the Packers offense way back. How are you feeling about their special teams and specifically in the return game?
The return coverage has been pretty brutal to start the season. Really no excusing it. A couple of fumbles, some pretty bad coverage. And I think part of it kind of boils down to new coordinator, and you're kind of trying to change things around a little bit. So, we want to think that, the addition of new coaches is going to make things, better immediately. And it takes time. And especially when, special teams coordinators aren't working with a lot of first stringers like a new offensive or new defensive coordinator are. They're working with guys who are just barely making the team. So,
Right.
They're not working with the prime rib of the talent on the team. So,
Right.
you know, it's tough to kind of get these guys to play week in and week out consistently in coverage who are coming off the bench cold every so. I mean, they're not playing consistently enough for special teams to be, a strong suit of this team. So
Right.
obviously there'll be a few guys in there that I've seen playing time, like Fackrell's a pretty good special teamer, but yeah, it's just, it'll take time. We'll see what Meninga's worth in the next couple of weeks, being able to coach these guys up. But yeah, it's a concern. Hopefully getting some guys back healthy will help. Ibrahim Campbell should be coming off the PUP list here soon. I think that'll help Will Redmond, who will probably be a little bit more of a special teamer moving forward.
Right.
Getting Tony Brown will help a lot of things there. So, I take it with a grain of salt because they're 5-1. They've been able to overcome those turnovers and those bad plays, but
Right.
it is something to keep an eye on moving forward.
Right. Okay, so we'll touch on this last big topic here, officiating. Matt, give me your 2-minute breakdown, or however long you want to go with this. Talk to me about it, man. What did you think about the officiating in last night's game?
Well, it's hard to call it anything but brutal, really and truly. And it benefited the Packers. It absolutely did. The hands to the face was questionable. There was another hand to the face a couple plays earlier that was questionable. And I think you're seeing it league-wide. People are starting to notice that this is becoming a larger and larger problem, and I kind of alluded to it earlier. They're deferring to the replay process to kind of correct some indecisiveness on their ends. But, the Lions had every opportunity to win this football game. They really, got up on the Packers early. Were up 13-0. They kicked 5 field goals in that game. You're not winning too many football games when you're trying to settle for field goals. So as much as, and I said this after the Packers lost to the Eagles in questionable fashion with pass interference a couple weeks ago, the Packers had every opportunity to win that football game too,
Yep.
and they didn't capitalize. So, it evens out over week over week, and I know Rodgers kind of said the same thing after the game. It does even itself out, and Lord only knows Packer fans have been, shorted by that plenty of times before.
Right.
So it's tough because you want to see the integrity of the game be consistent week over week, and it just wasn't there last night. The officials were just absolutely brutal. And, at some points it will come back to haunt the Packers, but the Packers come out with a victory. That's all I'm kind of focusing on right now. But, it does leave a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth.
Yeah, I definitely think, that now with the coaches being able to challenge some of these calls, again, the replay, all the technology, all the ability to be able to get it right, and sometimes it's still blatantly wrong. And like you said, this obviously helped assist the Packers. Now, I said exactly what you said on social media last night. The Lions had every opportunity to win this game. There's no way what lost them the game were the 2 questionable, hands to the face penalties. Now, NFL officials did say one of those was not a penalty, but they did also clarify, the actual referees from the game did say it's a head and neck area call. And so while there's been, of course, multiple screenshots, floating around social media of how it appears, at one point, what's his name? Trey Flowers has Bakhtiari by, the pads, and it's not in the head or the neck. There's other views that do show that he's got his hand on his face, face mask, or up in the neck area. So, given what the officials have given us, let's just call it 50-50, and One call was right, one call was wrong. 5 field goals is probably not going to win you too many games in the NFL. You know, the Lions had a lot of opportunities to win the game. The Packers had plenty of opportunities to win the game against the Eagles a few weeks ago. What really, really gets me is that, you know, yes, sometimes in these crucial moments and points at the game, we just see this inconsistency in the officiating. Sometimes, you know, they're calling ticky-tack, you know, calls like, you know, when I believe it was Rashawn Gary dusted off, you know, Dak's helmet. Do you remember that penalty?
Oh my God, yes.
You know, and you know, you see penalties like this, and then you see something like, you know, Kevin King's interception that he had against Dallas. Obviously, there was a lot of contact. They did not call that. Then you see, you know, MVS, you know, getting smacked in the face, you know, on that big catch, you know, a couple of weeks ago. That's not called. There's just a ton of inconsistency, and you have to play the game, and you have to beat the opponent, and you have to beat the officials. And every team has the same opportunity to do this and to pull it off. And so, you know, I saw all kinds of banter on social media yesterday, today, and I get it. You know, it's a little bit of a hot topic right now. I think Clay Matthews took to Twitter to, you know, kind of share his 2 cents on the subject, and a lot of people have. It's just something, though, that it's going to be one of those things that one team's going to ultimately benefit from it more by getting a win than the other every week. And, you know, it's just one of those tough things to swallow. Like you said, leaves a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth. You know, but at the end of the day, the Packers are 5-1. I tweeted out today, there's no shame in our game. There's nothing to be ashamed about. They did what they had to do to win the game. The Lions did not do enough. That's point blank what it came down to. You know, talk about a heads-up play. I think about a $1:45 left in the game. You know, Packers got the ball down in the red zone. Jamal Williams has a free lane into the end zone. What does he do? He falls on his butt, you know, and purposely, you know, downs that ball, makes the Lions, I believe they had one more timeout at that point, makes them use those timeouts. Rodgers kneels it out, kicks the field goal. That was phenomenal game management by the head coach, by Rodgers, by Williams, to all be in sync to win the game. Yep. So, again, I think it came down to, I saw somebody else posted, you know, and I got the stats here. The Packers literally won almost every category. First downs, Packers. Passing first downs, Packers. You know, won't read off all the numbers. You know, third down, Packers. Total plays, Packers. Total yards, Packers. You know, the Lions had one more drive. Yards per play, Packers. Passing yardage, Packers. Passing completed, Packers. You know, rushing, Packers by a landslide. You know, again, it came down to, you know, a field goal at the end of the game. The Lions lose by a point. I get it. It's heartbreaking. Nobody likes to lose in this league, but the Packers actually really won that game on all phases. As much as people like to say it was a much closer game, I don't really think it was.
Yeah, and honestly, you look at it, it was, they had their opportunities down the stretch to win that game. The Lions did. And on the last drive, there were a couple penalties you could have argued that weren't against. There probably shouldn't have been against them. But the one that people don't point to is 12 men on the field absolutely killed the Lions because they were lining up for the field goal, and it gave the Packers a first down, and they were able to completely kill the clock after that. So,
yep.
It really is. It's a week-to-week league. You have to play to your opponent. You have to play to what is given in front of you. And the Packers played to it and won yesterday. They did what they needed to do to win that game. It wasn't pretty. The officials, you can say what you want about the officials, but the Packers did. The Packers can't be blamed for what they did yesterday. They stopped the Lions in the second half completely. 58 yards in the second half. That's insane. Packers did enough to win yesterday. I wish it would have been, without less controversy, but I'll take what I can get.
And that's just a part of the league at this point, So it is what it is. Yep. So Matt, we've got the Raiders coming to town this Sunday at noon. They've had a little bit of a resurgence, Do you have their record on hand? I think they're 3-3.
Don't off the top of my head, but I can take a look real quick. But
something like that. And I've noticed a little bit of, kind of spunk in their step a little bit. I think they kind of started off a little bit rough, and they pulled off a few wins. And so, again, I think the Packers are going to be faced with a tough task because every team right now, the Packers are separating at this point. They're 5-1. They are the division leader in the NFC North. And they are probably at this point, you've got the Niners who are 5-0. You've got who are actually, winning the NFC West, which is equally probably as tough as the NFC North at this point. But, you've got the Packers right now as probably a top 5 team in the league. So I'm expecting the Raiders to throw the kitchen sink at them and definitely be trying to give them their best shot.
Yeah, and this is an interesting Raiders team. They obviously beat the Bears over in London. They beat the Broncos the first week of the season. But the teams that they've played outside of that are the Chiefs, and they got smoked, and the Vikings, and they got smoked. So the downside is they're getting the Raiders off a bye week, and the Packers are going to be on short rest. So it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be a really ugly football game on Sunday. I'll be completely honest, especially if the Packers aren't going to have Devontae Adams, if they don't have Geronimo Allison. Hopefully Bob Tonyan's back. Hopefully some of these injuries that came out of this last game are back in time. So Darnell Savage, hopefully he's back. But yeah, I mean, I'm not predicting anything pretty. They very well might win, but boy, I don't like a team coming off a bye ever.
Yeah, exactly. So, that being said, I think we'll look forward to this next week and see what that brings us. But hey, the Packers are 5-1, man. Nothing to complain about here. Leaders in the NFC North, man. I am absolutely ecstatic and excited to what they have put out on the field so far. So we are going to be signing off for this episode. You can find Matt, you can find myself, both on Twitter. Look us up on Twitter. Look us up, PTTTF Podcast on Twitter, all of our social media outlets. These podcasts are going out to all kinds of different outlets. So listen, find us, share us, retweet us, repost us, get it out there. Let's get some more people out there listening to this. Listen, if you appreciate this podcast, we want to hear from you. Shoot us a message. Let us know that you like what we're doing over here. And we definitely just appreciate all the listeners, everyone that tunes in every single week. And so with that being said, Matt, hit them with a big Go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.